The ground shook before the sky even turned red. A sound deep, distant, like something ancient moved across the land like a slow scream. No one in the outer colonies knew what it meant. Not yet. On the edge of the royal province, hidden in a valley of cracked stone and dry air, a man lived inside an old clay jar. It wasn't much, just a shell big enough for one person to crouch inside. The jar was half buried in the dust, its sides faded by time, its mouth chipped. To anyone else, it looked like a ruin. But inside that jar lived him no name, no voice, no record in the Queen's great data books. He had been forgotten long ago, but he did not mind. He watched the world, listened to wind and stars, and lived. As still as stone. Some called him mad. Others said he was a ghost. No one dared to bother him. Until war came. It started with heat. The kind of heat that boiled under your skin. Then came the ash storms. Clouds so thick and black they turned day into night. Animals ran from the forests. Birds fell from the sky. One morning, a royal scout ship flew low and did not return. That same day, the Queen's guards arrived in full armor. They found the man sitting by his jar, calmly watching the sky as red light flashed in the distance. "You there," one of the guards barked, stepping forward. "You must leave this area. This land is now under military lockdown." The man did not speak. He only blinked once and tilted his head, as if listening to something they could not hear. The guards didn't like that. "He's not right in the head," one muttered. "Leave him," another said. "He'll be dead before sunset anyway." But the war did not reach him, not yet. While the cities burned and fleets clashed in orbit, the man in the jar stayed untouched. And that made the Queen curious. Queen Varela ruled not just the planet but 5 systems beyond it. She was feared, worshipped, obeyed. But she also listened to whispers, to patterns, to things normal people ignored. And she had heard the tale of a man in a clay jar who never aged, never moved, and never died. In the 3rd week of war, after 2 of her capital cities were wiped out by unknown weapons, she sent her royal ship to the valley. Not scouts, not guards. She came herself. Her boots sank into the dust as she stepped down from her transport. Her cloak shimmered in the burning light, long and sharp as a blade. Her guards waited behind her, silent, as she approached the jar. Was there, still, sitting, barefoot, looking at her like she was just another storm. "You," she said. "You've lived here through every fire and flood. Are you cursed?" He said nothing. "Are you a god?" she asked. He smiled at that barely. "I've lost over 200,000 souls," she said. "And yet you sit untouched. Tell me how." At last he opened his mouth. His voice was soft and slow like wind moving over sand. "I only ask the world for silence. In return, it leaves me alone." She stared at him. "Then I ask you now for something more." He looked at her. "I will grant you one wish," she said. "Anything you want? Gold, time, a new body, a title, just one. In return, you must answer my question. What is coming? What force can burn planets without ships or sound?" He did not answer right away. He simply turned and placed his hand on the side of the jar. "The same thing that comes for all rulers," he said. "Truth." She narrowed her eyes. "What truth?" He stood slowly, bones creaking, body thin like old wire. But his eyes burned with strange light. "You ask what is burning your world," he said, "but you never ask why it burns." She stepped back. "Then tell me why," she demanded. He walked past her and looked up at the sky. "Because it is." Ode. There was a long silence. Then he turned to her and said, "I will take my wish now." The guards raised their weapons. The Queen held up a hand. "Speak it." He looked at her ancient eyes, full of things no human should carry. I wish, he said, that you feel what your people feel. Every hunger, every fear, every last breath. The queen's face went pale, and for the first time in years, she trembled. Asterisk at first, nothing happened. The queen stood still, her royal cloak dancing lightly in the desert wind. Her guards watched with steady hands near their weapons. The man in the clay jar remained silent, his eyes still locked on her. Then her breath caught. Just a flicker. No one noticed it at first, just a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth, like something had shifted deep inside her chest. She blinked. Again. Then once more faster. A whisper passed through her mind, not words, but feelings. Cold, hunger, pain. A mother trying to hush her crying child in a metal shelter. An old miner coughing blood beneath collapsed rock. A boy, with no shoes, walking 10 kilometers just to bring his father water that smelled like rust. Her body stiffened. Then came the voices. Not in the air, not in her ears, but inside her head. They were loud. They were angry. They were hers. A guard stepped forward. Your Majesty? Her hand shot up, warning him not to come any closer. Her breathing grew louder, rougher. Something's wrong, one whispered. She looks afraid. The queen slowly looked up, her gaze wild and distant. Her proud face had gone pale. Her shoulders, once squared, now hunched like she was carrying something heavy. I hear them, she whispered. Who? The lead guard asked. All of them, she said. Every single soul I rule. The man in the jar didn't speak. He only watched as she slowly turned toward the direction of her capital, though it was far beyond the mountains. There's too many, she muttered. Too many voices, too much suffering. She clutched her chest. I feel their fear, their hunger, their hatred, their betrayal. The guards began to panic. One tried to reach for her arm to steady her. She shoved him back with a sudden burst of strength that came from fear, not power. Do not touch me, she screamed. Do not come near me. She turned back to the jar man. What have you done? I gave you what you asked, he said, voice calm. A single wish, and you wanted answers. But answers are not clean. Her lips quivered. I thought you would ask for gold, or your youth, or to be remembered. But no, you asked for truth. And truth does not bend to crowns. She staggered backward, tripping on her own feet. A guard caught her. She looked up at him, and in that moment, she didn't see a soldier. She saw his mother dying alone in the wastelands. She saw his wife, crying herself to sleep, waiting for him to come home. She saw his child, coughing into a torn pillow. In a dirty city block, she screamed. The man in the jar stepped forward. He didn't walk like a king or a monster. He walked like someone who had already seen the end and accepted it. Your people suffer because you never hear them, he said. Now you will hear nothing else. She looked at him, eyes wild. How do I stop it? He shook his head. You don't. The queen dropped to her knees. For the first time in her long rule, she cried, not for herself, but for everyone else. Because now she could feel what they felt. The man knelt beside her, gently placing one hand on the dusty ground. There is a reason I live in silence, he whispered. Because once you truly hear the world, you cannot forget it. She looked at him. You were one of us once, weren't you? He nodded. A long time ago. Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you help us? I tried, he said. No one listened. A long silence passed between them. The wind grew heavier. Above them, the sky shifted again. This time, it wasn't smoke, it was something. Moving behind the clouds, a ripple, a shape. A thing too large to understand. The queen looked up. What is that? He looked too, eyes narrowing. That is what's coming. She turned to him, desperate. Is it a god? No, he said. It is what you created. Her breath hitched. Can it be stopped? He stood. That depends. Will you listen this time? Far behind them, the royal ship blinked warning lights. Messages flashed on the console. The command center was screaming for orders, but Queen Virella stayed kneeling in the dust lost in the pain of 1,000 broken souls. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a queen. She felt human. Asterisk. The queen did not speak for a long time. She sat in the dirt, her royal armor dusty, her crown tilted from where she had fallen. Her hands gripped the ground like she was afraid the earth would vanish beneath her. Her guards stood back, unsure. This wasn't the queen they knew. She was always calm, cold, in control. But now she looked lost. Her breath trembled. Her lips moved like she was whispering names no one else could hear. Finally, she stood up, slowly, carefully, not like a queen, but like a woman waking from a bad dream. I want to understand, she said. The man nodded. You already do. That's the curse of truth. You cannot look away. I want to fix it, she added, her voice quieter. You want to fix an empire built on silence? He asked. She didn't answer. He turned back toward the clay jar. Then come with me. The guards shifted. Your Majesty, no. But she raised her hand. Stay here. This is my choice. She followed the man through the dusty valley, the rock sharp beneath her boots. The air grew warmer as they moved deeper between the cliffs. Strange symbols appeared on the stone walls, old forgotten letters, glowing faintly with blue light. They came to a place where the ground opened in a wide circle. In the center sat another jar, larger, darker. Not empty like the one he had lived in. This one pulsed, as if breathing. This is where I first heard the voices, he said, long ago. When I was a soldier in your war. The queen stared. You were a soldier? I was loyal, brave, a killer. I believed in your rule. What changed? He looked at her. I saw the ones left behind. The villages burned. The children taken. The silence after every victory. The jar pulsed again. I came here looking for peace, he continued. I asked the jar to take the noise away, and it did. He stepped closer. But now the jar has awakened again. And it doesn't want silence anymore. The queen felt her skin crawl. What does it want? He looked at her with those deep, quiet eyes. Balance. She turned to the pulsing jar. What is it? It's not a thing, he said. It's a memory. Of every broken promise. Every forgotten soul. Every cruel command. The queen stepped closer. She didn't know why, but she knelt before it. The hum grew louder. In her mind, she saw images flash again. Miners choking on dust. Slaves in freezing camps. Children sold as tools. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't know. She whispered. You never looked. He replied. She touched the jar. It was warm. And the moment her skin met it, everything inside her cracked open. She was a girl again. Watching her brother dragged away to serve in the queen's army. She was a new ruler, standing in front of an angry crowd, swearing to bring peace, then signing orders to send them back to war. She was standing over a prisoner, listening as he begged for mercy, then ordering silence. Every wrong choice, every ignored. Screamed. It all came back. She pulled her hand away, gasping. Her legs gave out again. She hit the ground, choking back sobs. The man stood beside her. The jar doesn't punish, he said. It reminds. She looked up at him, eyes red. Why me? Why now? Because you still have time, he said. The next fire hasn't reached the palace yet, but it will. She wiped her face, trying to stand. Then I need to go back. He tilted his head. And do what? I don't know, she admitted. But I can't sit on a throne made of bones, not anymore. For the first time, the man smiled. Then there may still be hope. She turned to him. "Will you come with me?" He looked to the sky. The strange clouds were still turning. The wind was colder now. "No," he said. "My place is here. I listen. That is enough." The queen nodded slowly. She walked back to her guards with dust on her armor and silence in her eyes. They opened the ship's door for her, but no one dared to speak as the ship lifted into the sky. She looked down at the man still standing by. His jar she didn't know what he was, but he had changed her more than 1,000 battles ever could. And deep inside she knew. This war was not over. It was only beginning. The queen did not speak on the journey back. The guards flew the ship in silence, unsure whether to bow or keep their distance. She sat with her hands resting on her knees, her eyes fixed on nothing. Yet seeing everything. Something inside her had changed. She could feel it. The voices were quieter now, not gone but clearer, not like noise but like people. Real people. She could hear their fear, their hunger, their prayers. Her ship arrived at the capital before dawn. The golden towers still stood, but their glow was dull. Fires burned at the edge of the walls. Citizens were already gathering at the palace gate, shouting for food, for shelter, for answers. Soldiers tried to hold them back, but the cries rose higher than the walls. The queen stepped out without a single word. She did not ride a hover-chariot. She did not wear her crown. And when the crowd saw her walking alone, without guards many, stopped shouting. They stared, confused. A child pointed. A woman dropped to her knees. The queen raised her hand. Not in command, but in calm. "Bring me the ministers," she said softly. Inside the palace, her officials were waiting. They expected fury, blame, accusations. But instead, she walked in slowly, took her seat, and looked at each one of them with quiet eyes. "Tell me," she said, "how much food do we have?" They blinked. One finally answered, "Enough for another 6 days, if we ration." She nodded. "How many planets have fallen?" 3 confirmed. 1 more silent. "And the reason?" "Still unknown, Your Majesty. The attacks leave no trace. No ships, no signals, just destruction." She closed her eyes for a long second. "And the refugees?" "Flooding in from every direction, thousands, maybe more." The queen opened her eyes again. "Then it begins now. No more titles, no more masks." The ministers looked at each other. "What do you mean, Majesty?" "I mean we tear it all down," she said. "The slave markets, the tax chains, the forced camps, everything." They gasped. "Forgive me, Queen," one said nervously, "but that would collapse the economy." She stared at him, then let it collapse. Another one spoke up, voice shaking. "But the royal houses will revolt." "They can try," she said coldly, "but they won't survive it." A new voice came from the chamber's edge. It was General Arvin, head of her fleet. A cold man with scars on both sides of his face. "What happened to you in that valley?" he asked. She looked at him. "I met someone." "Who?" She paused. "A man who lives in silence, and yet made me hear the whole universe." Arvin frowned. "Was he alien?" "No, human, forgotten, like the rest." "And you trust him?" "I don't need to," she said. "He already gave me what I needed." The general stepped forward. "Majesty, if you show weakness now..." "Enough!" She snapped, and her voice echoed hard across the marble room. Everyone fell silent. "I am not weak," she said. "But I have been blind, and now I see. The war is not just out there in the stars. It is inside these walls." A long silence followed. The queen stood. "Ready the aid ships," she said. "Open the royal vaults. Feed the cities. Heal the broken. Burn the scrolls that bind people in chains." One minister stood slowly. "And what of our enemies?" She looked out the window. toward the dark sky. They're already here. We just haven't recognized them yet. That night, something strange happened. The palace gates opened to the people. Food was distributed. The royal tax records were erased. No one understood why. Some said the queen had lost her mind. Others said she had seen a vision. But deep in the far valleys, far from cities and power, the man in the clay jar opened his eyes. And for the first time in 100 years, he stood and walked beyond the stone circle, because he felt it too. The sky was not done yet. Something was moving above. It was coming for them all. Asterisk. The queen's orders changed everything. People thought it was a trick at first. Rumors spread. Some said she had been poisoned. Others whispered that she had died and been replaced by a clone. But when the food arrived and the guards began opening prison doors, people stopped talking. They watched. They waited. Then they wept. One by one, the cities began to breathe again. Not fully, not in joy, but in relief. For the first time in years, no one was hunted for being poor, sick, or useless. The soldiers who once broke down doors now lifted the wounded and carried them to warm shelters. But peace was thin, like cracked glass. And in the sky above, the cracks were growing. It began with shadows. Shapes that moved where there was no light. Large, silent things that floated across the stars without engines or heat. Sensors couldn't detect them. Ships couldn't track them. But people felt them in dreams, in the cold behind their necks, in the silence between thoughts. The queen stood in her tower and watched the horizon. Her face was tired, but her eyes were open. She had not slept in 2 days. The voices in her mind had not gone, but they had changed. Less screaming. More whispering. Like they were waiting for something. She called for the royal scientists. What are we facing? They showed her images, faint outlines of massive figures, larger than cities, moving like clouds. We don't know if they're alive, one said. But they're not ships. Are they coming here? She asked. They're already here, he whispered. A sharp chill moved through her. That same hour, far away in the dusty valley, the man in the clay jar stopped walking. He had reached the edge of a deep canyon where old bones of ancient machines lay half buried. The jar still hummed behind him, calling him softly. But now something else had joined the song, a vibration in the wind, a low thrum in the rocks. The air cracked like glass. He looked up. And there it was. Not a beast. Not a god, but a wound in the sky. A huge, jagged tear, glowing with white-blue light. It wasn't an object, it was a gap. A break in space itself. Something beyond it was pushing through. It wasn't loud, but it was hungry. He sat on the ground, eyes fixed upward, and whispered, "They're waking up." Back at the palace, alarms blared. Something had entered orbit, but it didn't match any alien signature. It had no metal, no design, no tech. It looked like a long, moving ripple, like water, like a shadow, like thought. It was circling the planet. People began to panic. Ships launched. Defense towers powered up. The queen stepped outside, climbed the highest platform, and stood where everyone could see her. "No one run," she ordered through the broadcast. "No one hide. They are not here to conquer," she said. "They are here to remind us." The people were confused. "What are they?" Someone asked. She answered slowly. "They are memories." That night, the shapes in the sky moved closer. Some people said they saw faces in them. Others saw old cities, lost homes, buried regrets. A soldier said he saw his mother reaching for him from the sky, though she'd been dead 20 years. The queen stood in her chamber and felt the voices again. Closer now. They were not screaming anymore. They were waiting, and she finally understood. It wasn't just about her. It was about them all. She turned to her guards. "Send word to the valley. Bring the man from the jar." Asterisk, the Queen's message traveled fast. A royal air skimmer raced toward the valley, cutting through storm clouds and ash winds. The guards on board weren't like the others. These were the quiet ones, chosen not for strength, but for loyalty. They had been ordered, bring the man back, but with respect. No chains. No threats. When they reached the valley, the jar was empty. The man was already waiting. He stood on the edge of the canyon where the tear in the sky glowed faintly. Strange. Wind circled the rocks, and glowing dust hung in the air like forgotten memories. The man's eyes were closed, but he spoke as soon as they landed. "I know why you've come." The guards approached slowly. "She asked for you." "She should have done that long ago," he said quietly. "Will you come with us?" He turned to them, his expression unreadable. "It's time." They flew him back to the capital. As they passed through the clouds, he saw the shapes more clearly now. Dozens, hundreds, like flowing rivers of thought drifting slowly above the planet. Each one shimmered with shifting forms, faces. Hands, cities, flames, broken statues, screams without sound. The memories of a civilization. Floating above its ruins, he said nothing. When they arrived, the Queen met him alone in the tower courtyard. She didn't wear her crown. No robes, just a simple coat. Her hair was tied back, and her face was pale. "You came," she said softly. "You called," he answered. She looked up at the sky. "Are they alive?" He followed her gaze. "They're echoes." "Of what?" "Of us?" She swallowed hard. "Are they here to destroy us?" "No," he said. "They're waiting. For what?" He looked at her, his voice calm. "For an answer." She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "I've changed everything, freed the people, broken the chains." "Isn't that enough?" He nodded. "It's a beginning." "But that's not what they want." "Then what do they want?" "Justice," he said. "Not for one, for all." She shook her head. "I don't know how to give that." "You can't give it," he said. "You must allow it." A sharp wind passed through the courtyard, and with it came a soft sound like crying, but deeper. It wasn't sadness. It was release. The Queen looked around. "What do I do?" He stepped forward, eyes glowing faintly. "Stand before them. Show them your soul. Let them decide if you are still worthy." A long silence passed between them. Then she nodded. "Bring me before them." They went to the high roof, the tallest point of the palace, where the sky looked close enough to touch. The city watched below. The world held its breath. The Queen stepped forward. The man stood behind her. Above, the sky tore wider. A massive shape descended, not falling, but gliding, silent, wide as a city. Inside its glowing surface, 1,000 faces turned toward her. They were not angry. They were not kind. They were watching. The Queen raised her voice. "I was blind. I ruled through fear. I lived in silence while others suffered. I do not ask for mercy," she said. "I only ask to be seen as I see you now." The wind stopped. The lights above blinked. Then came a voice, not through ears, but in every heart. "You have heard us." The people in the city fell to their knees. Some wept. Others bowed their heads. All could hear it. "Then you must listen again." A beam of light fell from the sky and touched the Queen. She didn't move. She didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes. The light passed through her, then vanished. She remained standing. But something had changed. She turned to the man. "What just happened?" "You've been judged," he said, "and forgiven. Then it's over?" He looked at the sky. "No," he said. "Now it begins." Asterisk. The people didn't know what to think. One day they were starving under a cruel empire. The next, the chains were broken, the prisons opened, and the Queen herself stood beneath a sky full of ghosts asking forgiveness. And they had heard a voice, not from her. Not from any ship, but from something greater, something older, something watching all of them from above. The queen walked down from the high roof without guards. Her steps were slow. Her face looked softer now, not weak, but different. She no longer held herself like someone trying to control everything. She moved like someone who had been remade. Crowds gathered as she passed through the city streets. They didn't kneel. They didn't cheer. They simply watched. And for the first time, she met their eyes. Each one. No fear, no pride, only honesty. Behind her, the man from the jar followed quietly. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. But when people saw him, they whispered, not in fear, but in wonder. They called him the listener. The queen returned to the palace and sat in a simple chair in the center courtyard, not the throne. She called her officials, her guards, her generals. And she dissolved the monarchy. In one speech, she ended her own power. No more rulers, she said. No more crowns. We must rule together now or fall forever. Gasps spread through the hall, but no one spoke against her. Because far above, the sky still glowed. The beings had not left, but they had become calm. Soft streams of light drifted down into the mountains, the oceans, the ruins. And where the light touched, life returned. Burned cities began to grow again. Poisoned rivers turned clear. Wounded soldiers stood up, their pain gone. Not magic, not miracles. Memory healed. And still, the man from the jar said nothing until one night. The queen found him back in the valley. He sat beside the clay jar again, his hands resting on his knees. You've done what no one could, she said. He looked at her. No, you did. She sat beside him on the dry ground. I'm scared, she admitted. That's good, he said. Fear makes us listen. She looked at the jar. Will you leave it again? He shook his head. No, my part is over. I will stay here. For how long? He smiled. Until silence is needed again. She stood, brushing dust from her coat. Then goodbye, listener. He didn't answer, because she was already walking away. Years passed. The queen lived as a teacher, as a healer, as a voice among many. The people ruled together. Not perfectly, not easily, but openly. And in the valley, a clay jar remained. Some said the man inside had turned to dust. Others said he was still there, listening, watching. Waiting. And above the world, the sky no longer glowed with judgment, but with memory. A quiet reminder that even the smallest voice could change everything.